The email notification lit up my phone at exactly 11:47 p.m. Singapore time. Property transfer complete. 847 Maple Street. I stared at the screen, champagne glass frozen halfway to my lips. My colleagues were celebrating around me, toasting the biggest acquisition of my career, a $50 million merger I just closed after 6 months of negotiations. But those 4 words on my phone made everything else disappear. 847 Maple Street, my house, my grandmother's house, the Victorian with the wraparound porch and the rose garden she'd spent 30 years perfecting, the house I'd bought from the estate with my own money, every penny I'd saved working 70-hour weeks since college, the house I'd left keys for with my parents, just in case of emergency 3 months ago when this Singapore deal started. I'm Jennifer Thompson. I'm 35 years old, and I'd just discovered my parents had sold my house without asking me. My hands shook as I opened the attached document. There it was, a deed transfer dated 4 days ago with a signature that looked almost exactly like mine. Almost. The loops were too perfect. I never dotted my I's with little circles like that. I'd done that when I was 16 maybe, but not in the last decade. Jennifer, you okay? My colleague Marcus touched my shoulder. You look like you've seen a ghost. I forced a smile, the same smile I'd perfected over years of family dinners where I pretended everything was fine. Just jet lag. I'm going to head back to the hotel. The taxi ride through Singapore's gleaming streets blurred past. I called my parents. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. Always voicemail. Finally, at 1 a.m. my time, 1 p.m. back in Ohio, my mother picked up. Oh, Jennifer, honey, how's Singapore? Her voice was bright, cheery, like we were discussing the weather. Mom, what did you do to my house? Silence. Then a laugh. Actually, a laugh. Oh, that! Sweetie, we helped you out. That old house was just sitting there empty while you're traveling all the time for work. We found a buyer, got a great price, $430,000. Can you believe it? My grandmother's face flashed through my mind, the way she'd hold my hand walking through that rose garden, teaching me the names of every variety. Sterling silver, double delight, peace. You helped me? Mom, you sold my house, without asking, without telling me. Well, honey, you're so busy with your important career. The way she said important made it sound like a character flaw. We didn't want to bother you. Besides, your father and I talked to Michael about it, and he really needs the money right now for his new business venture. There it was. Michael. My 40-year-old brother who'd never held a job for more than 18 months. My brother who'd dropped out of 3 different colleges, started 7 different businesses that all failed, and still somehow remained the golden child who could do no wrong. You gave my money to Michael? Jennifer Marie Thompson, don't take that tone. We raised you better than that. Family helps family. You're doing so well, you don't need it. Michael's struggling, and this is his chance to finally make something of himself. You should be supporting your brother. I closed my eyes. The taxi pulled up to my hotel. Where's the money now? In Michael's account. He's starting a beach bar in Florida. Isn't that exciting? He's always wanted to live by the ocean. $430,000, my savings, my security, my grandmother's legacy, gone, transferred into my brother's account to fund another guaranteed failure while I stood in a country 8,000 miles away, powerless to stop it. I need to go, Mom. Oh, okay, sweetie. Love you. So proud of you for closing that big deal. Your father and I were just telling everyone at church how successful you are. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my hotel room overlooking the Marina Bay and laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. I called a lawyer the next morning. She listened patiently as I explained everything. Do you have evidence the signature was forged? I wasn't in the country. I have passport stamps, flight records. That helps, but family cases are extremely messy, Ms. Thompson. The legal fees could exceed what you'd recover. And prosecuting your own parents? She paused. Most people find it's not worth the emotional cost. Most people. I thanked her and hung up, Booked a flight back to Cleveland for 2 weeks later, after I finished the merger paperwork. Spent those 2 weeks working 18-hour days, avoiding my thoughts, ignoring the 47 text messages in the family group chat about Michael's exciting new business. The welcome home dinner was my mother's idea, of course. She'd invited everyone: my parents, Michael, Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, cousins I hadn't seen in 5 years. They gathered in my parents' dining room like nothing had happened, like this was a normal family celebration. "There she is, our little executive!" My father hugged me, smelling like Old Spice and self-satisfaction. "So proud of you, Jen. Heard that Singapore deal was massive." Michael stood by the fireplace, drink in hand, grinning. "Hey, sis, thanks for being so cool about everything. I knew you'd understand. Family's got to stick together, right?" Aunt Carol cornered me by the appetizers. "Your mother told me you're helping Michael with his business. That's so generous. He really needs this chance." I smiled, nodded, played my role. The responsible daughter. The successful one who had so much she could afford to share. Halfway through dinner, Michael stood up to make a toast. "I just want to thank my amazing family, especially my sister, for believing in me. This beach bar is going to change everything. I can feel it. And Jennifer, I know you said it's fine, but I promise I'll pay you back someday." I never said it was fine. I never said anything. But everyone raised their glasses, looking at me with warm smiles, expecting me to join the celebration of my own robbery. That night, alone in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up my laptop and started researching. Forged signatures, financial abuse, family fraud. Every article led to another, each one describing exactly what had happened to me, with the same ending. Victims rarely prosecuted because who wants to send their parents to jail? At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. An email from work. Subject line: "Congratulations on your promotion." I opened it, barely processing the words. Regional Director, effective immediately, overseeing all operations in the Midwest region, including acquisitions, personnel, and... I stopped breathing. There, on page 3 of the attached document, was a list of companies now under my management. Manufacturing firms, tech startups, consulting agencies. And there, third from the bottom, Henderson and Associates Consulting. My father worked at Henderson and Associates, had worked there for 18 years. My mother was their HR manager. And according to this document, Michael had just been hired as a junior associate 3 weeks ago. I logged into the company portal with my new credentials, pulled up the employee directory. There they were: Robert Thompson, senior consultant; Patricia Thompson, HR manager; Michael Thompson, junior associate. They'd sold my house, forged my signature, and stolen $430,000 from me. And they had no idea I'd just become their boss. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. My neighbor pounded on the wall, yelling at me to keep it down, but I couldn't stop. The universe had just handed me something I never expected: power. The next 3 weeks passed in a fog. I went through the motions at work, attending meetings, reviewing reports, avoiding the Henderson and Associates office. I needed time to think, time to plan, time to decide what kind of person I was going to be. My therapist's voice kept echoing in my head from our phone session. "Jennifer, what happened to you is financial abuse. Your parents violated your trust in the most fundamental way. You're allowed to be angry." But was I allowed to act on it? Was I allowed to use my new position to hold them accountable? Or would that make me just like them, someone who abused power for personal gain? I pulled up the employee files one night, started with my father. 18 years of performance reviews, all excellent. Then I noticed something. His expense reports, client dinners, travel reimbursements. I cross-referenced them with the company calendar. He'd expensed $15,000 in client dinners over the past year. But according to the calendar, he'd only had 3 client meetings during that time. The rest of the charges were from restaurants near his house, family celebrations, date nights with my mother, that vacation to Myrtle Beach where they'd posted photos on Facebook with the caption, "Blessed Life." He'd been stealing from the company, my company. I moved to Michael's file next. 4 months of employment. Salary, $7,000 per month, $28,000 total. His timesheet showed full-time hours. I pulled up his badge swipe records. 12. He'd swiped into the building exactly 12 times in 4 months. His work consisted of arriving at 10 a.m., leaving at 2 p.m., barely enough time to eat lunch and take a meeting. My mother's file was cleaner, but when I dug deeper, I found it. Complaints. 3 separate employees had filed grievances about nepotism in the hiring process. All 3 complaints had been resolved by my mother without escalation. All 3 employees had quit within 6 months. I sat back in my chair, staring at the evidence on my screen. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd been stealing from the company, my company, and my mother had been covering it up. I thought about my grandmother, the way she'd taught me to prune roses. You have to cut away the dead wood, Jennifer. It's not cruel. It's necessary. Otherwise, the whole plant suffers. At 11 p.m. on a Thursday night, I made my decision. I opened my email and typed 4 messages. 1 to the CFO. Request immediate audit of Henderson & Associates expense reports and timesheets. 1 to legal. Need consultation regarding employee fraud investigation. 1 to my executive assistant. Schedule site visit to Henderson & Associates office for Monday, 9 a.m. And 1 to my therapist. I know what I need to do now. The weekend crawled by. Saturday, I went to see my grandmother's grave. Brought roses from the farmer's market since I couldn't pick them from her garden anymore. Someone else owned that garden now. Someone who'd paid my parents $430,000 that I'd never see again. I'm sorry, Grandma, I whispered to the headstone. I let them take it. But I'm not going to let them get away with everything else. Sunday night, I got a call from my mother. Hi, honey. Just checking in. We haven't seen you since the dinner. Everything okay? Everything's fine, Mom. Just busy with work. Oh, I know how that is. Your father and I were just saying how demanding your job must be. We're so grateful to work for such a stable company. Henderson & Associates has been so good to us. The irony was almost beautiful. Yeah, it's a great company. Well, don't work too hard. You need to find time for a personal life, too. You're not getting any younger and... I have to go, Mom. Meeting in the morning. Okay, sweetie. Love you. I didn't say it back. Monday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., put on my best suit, the black Armani I'd bought to celebrate the Singapore deal. Did my makeup carefully, professional, powerful, in control. My executive assistant had sent the agenda. 9 a.m. Welcome address to Henderson & Associates team. 9:30. One-on-one meetings with department heads. 10:30. Review of quarterly performance. I arrived at 8:45. The receptionist didn't recognize me. Why would she? I'd never visited this office before. Jennifer Thompson to see the team. Her eyes widened. Oh, Ms. Thompson! Of course! They're in the main conference room. I'll find it. I walked past her, heels clicking on the marble floor, following the signs. 2nd floor, conference room B. I paused outside the door. Inside, I could hear voices. My father's deep laugh, my mother's high-pitched giggle, Michael saying something about his beach bar plans, how he'd found the perfect location, how the money was already gone on the down payment and renovations. The money, my money, gone. Spent before I could stop it, even if I'd tried. I opened the door. 12 people sat around the conference table. My father at the head, mid-presentation, gesturing at a PowerPoint slide. My mother next to him, taking notes. Michael slouched in his chair, scrolling through his phone. Everyone turned to look at me. Confused faces. Who was this woman interrupting their meeting? My father's expression shifted first. Confusion to recognition to something that might have been fear. Jennifer? My mother's voice was small. What are you doing here? I walked to the front of the room, set my briefcase on the table, and smiled. The same smile I'd been giving them for 35 years. The smile that said everything was fine. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Thompson, your new regional director. As of 3 weeks ago, I oversee all operations at Henderson & Associates, along with 15 other companies in our portfolio. Dead silence. My father's face had gone pale. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Michael, oblivious as always, grinned. Hey sis! Wow, congrats on the promotion. This is so cool. We work together now. I didn't look at him. I looked at my father. I've been reviewing the financial records for this office. There are some significant discrepancies I need to address. Jennifer, my father started. Dad! I cut him off. The word felt like a weapon. In the past year, you've expensed over $15,000 in fraudulent charges. Michael's timesheet shows full-time employment, but his badge records show 12 actual days of work in 4 months. And Mom, you've buried 3 separate complaints about nepotism hiring practices. My mother stood up. Honey, let's talk about this privately. You're upset about the house, and I understand, but you can't just— I'm not upset, Mom. I'm done. I pulled 3 envelopes from my briefcase, handed them to HR director who wasn't my mother. Effective immediately, Robert Thompson, Patricia Thompson, and Michael Thompson are suspended pending investigation for fraud, timesheet falsification, and ethics violations. Please escort them from the building. The HR director took the envelopes with shaking hands. Ms. Thompson, are you sure? I'm sure. I finally looked at my mother. She was crying. Real tears, not the manipulative ones she'd used on me my whole life. How could you do this to your family? The question hung in the air. Everyone waited for my answer. My father, who'd taught me to ride a bike. My mother, who'd packed my lunches for 12 years of school. My brother, who'd shared a bunk bed with me when we were kids, before he became the golden child and I became the ATM. I learned from the best, I said quietly. Security arrived 5 minutes later. My father tried to argue. My mother tried to hug me. Michael, finally understanding what was happening, called me a word I won't repeat. I stood there and watched them be escorted out. Watched my father's briefcase being searched. Watched my mother's employee badge being confiscated. Watched Michael's face turn red as he realized his easy paycheck had just disappeared. When the door closed behind them, the remaining employees sat frozen, staring at me. Now then, I said, pulling up the next slide on the PowerPoint my father had been presenting. Let's talk about the quarterly numbers. I made it through the entire meeting, reviewed every department, answered every question, played the role of composed executive while my hands shook under the table. At noon, I locked myself in my new office and called my lawyer. Not the family lawyer, a new one, the one who specialized in fraud cases. I want to press charges, I said. All of them. My parents for the house, my father for the expense fraud, Michael for timesheet falsification. Everything. Ms. Thompson, are you absolutely certain? Once we start this process— I'm certain. The forensic accountant's report arrived 3 days later. 47 pages of evidence, each one more damning than the last. My father had been stealing for years. Not just the $15,000 I'd found. Over $63,000 in fraudulent expenses dating back 5 years. Client meetings that were actually family reunions. Business trips that were vacations. Even my college graduation dinner had been billed as a recruiting event. I sat in my therapist's office that Thursday, the report in my lap like a bomb. How do you feel? Dr. Richardson asked. Vindicated. The word came out sharp. My whole life, they made me feel selfish for wanting boundaries, for choosing my career over dropping everything to help Michael, for not just handing over money whenever they asked. And the whole time, they were literally stealing from me and everyone else. That's a lot of anger. I'm not angry. I was furious, the kind of rage that burns so hot it feels cold. I'm done being the good daughter, the responsible one, the ATM machine with feelings they could manipulate whenever they needed something. Dr. Richardson leaned forward. Jennifer, what you're feeling is completely valid. What they did was financial abuse, emotional abuse. You have every right to protect yourself. But I need you to think about what justice looks like for you. Is it punishment or is it freedom? I went home and couldn't sleep, pulled up my laptop and started searching. Adult children of narcissistic parents, financial abuse in families, going no contact. The stories were everywhere. Thousands of people just like me, realizing too late that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by respect. One article changed everything. A woman who'd sued her parents for forging her signature on a loan. She'd won, gotten every penny back. But at the end of the article, she said something that stuck with me. Winning in court didn't heal me. Setting boundaries did. I don't regret the lawsuit, but the real victory was the day I realized I didn't need their approval anymore. At 2 a.m., I started documenting everything, not just the financial fraud. Everything. Every time my parents had minimized my achievements to spotlight Michael, every time they'd asked for money and made me feel guilty for hesitating, every birthday they'd forgotten while throwing elaborate parties for my brother. The paper trail was extensive. Text messages, emails, bank statements showing I'd loaned Michael money 17 times in the past decade. Loans he never repaid. Loans that somehow became gifts when I asked about them. Friday morning, my lawyer called. The company wants to know if you're pressing charges or handling this internally. Both, I said. I want them prosecuted for the company fraud, and I'm suing them personally for the house. Jennifer, this will be public. Your family situation will be in court documents. The media might pick it up. Regional director sues her own parents. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my grandmother's rose garden, the way she'd taught me that sometimes you have to cut away the dead wood to save the plant. I'm prepared. The lawsuit was filed Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, my phone had 53 missed calls. None from my parents. They'd probably been advised by their lawyer not to contact me. All from extended family. Aunt Carol left a voicemail. Jennifer, what are you doing? They're your parents. This is horrible. How could you be so cruel? Uncle Jim texted, Your father is devastated. You're tearing this family apart over money. I thought you were better than this. My cousin Rachel, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, sent a long message about forgiveness and Christian values and how family should always come first. I blocked them all. Not out of anger, out of necessity. Dr. Richardson called it protecting your peace. I called it survival. But then, Tuesday afternoon, I got a different message. From Rachel's sister Emily, who I'd been close with as kids. Jen, I don't know the whole story, but I remember when we were teenagers, your parents missed your Honor Society induction because it was the same night as Michael's baseball game. You won a full scholarship to college, and they barely mentioned it because Michael was upset about not making the football team. I always thought you were treated differently. I'm sorry I didn't say anything then. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I cried reading that message. Not sad tears, relief tears. Someone had seen it. Someone had noticed. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making it up. Wednesday, the company investigation concluded. My father, terminated for cause, no severance. Fraud charges recommended. My mother, terminated for ethical violations, specifically covering up nepotism complaints. Michael, terminated for timesheet fraud. The local business journal ran a small article. 3 employees dismissed from Henderson and Associates following internal investigation. My phone lit up with calls from reporters. I declined all of them. Issued a statement through company PR. Henderson and Associates maintains the highest standards of ethical conduct. When violations are discovered, we take appropriate action regardless of the individuals involved. Thursday, my parents hired a lawyer. A cheap one, I could tell from the poorly worded letter that arrived via email. It claimed I was acting out of personal vendetta and abusing my corporate authority to destroy my family. It threatened a countersuit for emotional distress. My lawyer laughed when she read it. They forged your signature, stole almost $500,000, and they're claiming emotional distress? Let them try. Friday, I went to my first support group meeting. Adult children of narcissistic parents, held in a church basement in Lakewood. 12 people sitting in a circle drinking bad coffee, sharing stories that sounded eerily familiar. A woman named Sarah talked about her mother who'd stolen her identity and opened credit cards in her name. A man named David described his father who'd borrowed his life savings and gambled it away. A younger woman couldn't have been more than 25, cried as she explained how her parents had kicked her out at 18 but still expected her to pay their bills. When it was my turn, I told my story. All of it. The house, the forged signature, Michael's beach bar, the company fraud. Walking into that conference room and watching their faces go white. When I finished, Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. Good for you, she said. You did what most of us are too scared to do. You held them accountable. That weekend changed everything. I stopped checking my phone compulsively, stopped caring about the voicemails piling up, stopped losing sleep over whether I was the villain in my own story. Monday morning, 2 weeks after the suspensions, the civil lawsuit officially began. My lawyer had filed for the house sale money plus interest, legal fees, and damages. $485,000 total. My parents filed a motion to dismiss, claiming I'd given permission for the sale. Their evidence? A text message from 2 years ago where I'd said, "Sure, whatever you think is best," in response to my mother asking if she could change the paint color in the guest room. The judge denied the motion, set a hearing date for 6 weeks out. Those 6 weeks were the longest of my life. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into regional operations, visiting every office under my management, implementing new ethics protocols, personally reviewing expense reports. The Henderson and Associates office was struggling without 3 employees. I brought in replacements, better ones who actually worked. Morale improved within 2 weeks. But at home, alone at night, the doubts crept in. What if I was wrong? What if I was being too harsh? They were my parents. They'd raised me, fed me, clothed me. Didn't I owe them something? Then I'd remember my grandmother's funeral, how my mother had complained the entire time about the catering being too expensive, how my father had used the reception to network with potential clients, how Michael had been on his phone during the eulogy, texting someone about a party he was missing. I'd remember the day I'd told them I got the promotion to regional director. My mother's first response, "Does this mean you'll have more money to help Michael with his business idea?" I'd remember every birthday card with a check for $50 while Michael got $1,000 investment gifts, every graduation where my achievements were footnotes to his potential. The doubts would fade, the clarity would return. 3 days before the hearing, something unexpected happened. My cousin Emily called. "Jen, I need to tell you something. Aunt Carol called my mom yesterday, trying to get her to testify on your parents' behalf. Said you were being dramatic and vindictive. My mom told her to look at the court documents. We all did. And? Jennifer, they forged your signature. We saw the evidence, the handwriting analysis, everything. Some of us had no idea how bad it was. Aunt Carol is still on their side, but Uncle Jim apologized to my mom for his initial reaction. He said he didn't know the full story. Emily, you don't have to." "No, I do. We enabled this. We all saw how differently they treated you and Michael, and we said nothing because it was easier to keep the peace. I'm sorry, and I'll testify if you need me to." The day of the hearing arrived. I wore the same black Armani suit, walked into the courtroom with my lawyer, her briefcase full of evidence that could destroy my parents. They sat on the other side with their budget attorney, looking small and old. My father had aged 10 years in 6 weeks. My mother's hands shook as she clutched her purse. Michael wasn't there. Apparently, he'd moved to Florida anyway, beach bar or not, leaving them to face this alone. The hearing lasted 4 hours. My lawyer presented the forensic handwriting analysis, the timeline proving I was in Singapore, the bank records showing where the money went, email correspondence where my mother explicitly stated I'd agreed to help Michael, implying consent I'd never given. Their lawyer argued it was a misunderstanding, a family matter that should be resolved privately, claimed I'd always been generous with Michael, establishing a pattern of financial support. My lawyer presented my counter-evidence. Every text message where I'd expressed reluctance, every loan that had been demanded, not offered, every time they'd used guilt and manipulation to extract money from me. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd been mostly expressionless throughout, finally spoke. "I've presided over many family cases, and this is particularly troubling. Mrs. and Mr. Thompson, you didn't just sell your daughter's property without permission. You forged legal documents. That's fraud. The fact that she's your daughter doesn't make it less illegal. It makes it worse. You violated the deepest trust a parent-child relationship should have." My mother started crying. "Your Honor, please. She's our daughter. We only wanted to help our son." "By stealing from your daughter?" The judge's voice was sharp. "That's not help. That's theft, and it's clear from the evidence that this was part of a long pattern of financial exploitation." The ruling came down 2 days later. My parents were ordered to pay the full amount, $485,000, including interest and legal fees. They had 90 days to comply or face asset seizure. The criminal charges for my father's company fraud proceeded separately: probation, community service, restitution to the company. Michael, who'd fled to Florida, had a warrant issued for timesheet fraud. My mother, while not criminally charged, was blacklisted from HR positions after the ethics violations went into her permanent record. I thought winning would feel triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow. I'd gotten justice, sure, but I'd also lost my family. Even the relatives who'd apologized still kept their distance, uncomfortable with the whole situation. Thanksgiving came. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invited to my parents' house. The family group chat I'd been removed from months ago was probably full of plans I'd never see. I hosted Friendsgiving instead. Invited 12 people from my support group, a few colleagues from work, Emily and her family. We cooked together, laughed together, shared stories about the families we'd left behind and the families we were building. David from the support group raised his glass. To chosen family. The people who earn their place in our lives instead of demanding it. We all drank to that. Christmas was harder. I bought a new house. Nothing like my grandmother's Victorian, but something completely mine. Modern, clean lines. No memories attached except the ones I'd make. I planted a rose garden in the backyard. Sterling silver, double delight, peace. The same varieties my grandmother had loved. 1-year anniversary of the house sale came in January. My parents had sold their house to pay the judgment. Moved into a small apartment in Mentor. Michael's beach bar had failed, as predicted, and he'd moved back in with them. The golden child, now a 41-year-old burden living in his parents' second bedroom. I knew all this from Emily, who'd stayed in touch. She'd sent me a Facebook screenshot. My mother's post about how hard life was, how betrayed they felt, how their ungrateful daughter had destroyed their lives. The comments were mixed. Half offered sympathy. The other half asked pointed questions. Didn't she forge Jennifer's signature? Wasn't there fraud involved? Maybe there are two sides to this story. I didn't respond, didn't engage. Their narrative was crumbling on its own. February brought unexpected closure. My father's sister, Aunt Margaret, whom I'd barely known growing up, reached out via email. Jennifer, I'm writing to apologize. Your father and I haven't spoken in 20 years because of a similar incident. He borrowed money from me, never repaid it, and cut me off when I asked for it back. I watched him do the same thing to you, and I said nothing because I was still angry. I should have warned you. I'm sorry. What they did to you was wrong, and you were right to stand up for yourself. Hi, that email sat in my inbox for 3 days before I responded. When I finally did, it was simple. Thank you for telling me. It helps to know I wasn't imagining the patterns. She wrote back immediately. You weren't. Your father has always believed he's entitled to other people's money. Your mother enables him. And Michael? He's the product of their parenting. You broke the cycle. That takes courage. March brought a turning point. I was asked to speak at a women's business conference about ethical leadership. During Q&A, someone asked about difficult decisions I'd made. I told my story. Not all of it. This was a professional conference, not therapy. But the core of it, facing fraud in my own company, making the hard choice to hold people accountable even when they were family, learning that integrity sometimes means standing alone. The room was silent when I finished. Then, one by one, people stood up, a standing ovation that lasted 2 full minutes. Afterward, 7 women approached me privately. Each one shared similar stories. Parents who'd stolen from them, siblings who'd exploited them, family members who'd used guilt and obligation as weapons. One woman in her 50s grabbed my hand. I gave my brother $300,000 over 10 years. He never paid back a cent. I never said a word because family is supposed to forgive. But hearing your story, I'm done. I'm finally done being the family ATM. That's when I realized something crucial. My story wasn't just about getting revenge or even justice. It was about giving other people permission to set boundaries, to say no, to prioritize their own well-being over family obligations. I started a blog that week. Financial Abuse in Families, My Story. Posted everything, the forged signature, the court case, the aftermath. Within a month, it had 800,000 views, people sharing their own stories in the comments, people finding strength in knowing they weren't alone. April brought the most unexpected development. My mother called. First time in 6 months. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Jennifer. Her voice was tired, small. I wanted to tell you that your father and I are separating. We can't afford couples therapy, and living with Michael, it's too much. Everything fell apart after you. She stopped. After everything happened. I waited. She seemed to expect me to apologize, to rush in with comfort or money or solutions. I'm sorry to hear that, Mom, I said finally. I hope you find what you need. That's it? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I want you to say you forgive us. I want you to say you understand we were just trying to help your brother. I want my daughter back. She was crying now, real sobs. We lost everything because of you, our jobs, our house, our retirement. Michael is a mess. Your father barely speaks. And you're off living your perfect life, not caring what you did to us. The old Jennifer would have apologized, would have absorbed the blame, would have offered to help fix everything. The new Jennifer took a breath. Mom, you didn't lose everything because of me. You lost everything because you forged my signature, stole my money, and committed fraud. Those were your choices. I just refused to pretend they didn't happen. But we're your parents, and that should have made you treat me better, not worse. I have to go now. Take care of yourself. I hung up, blocked the number, told my lawyer to flag any future contact as potential harassment. Dr. Richardson smiled when I told her about the call in our next session. How do you feel? Free, I said. And I meant it. May brought full circle closure. The current owners of my grandmother's house, a young couple with 2 kids, posted pictures online of their Memorial Day garden party. The roses were blooming. Sterling silver. Double delight, peace. I felt a pang seeing those photos, but not of loss, of gratitude. That house was loved again. Those roses were cared for. My grandmother would have wanted that. I had my own roses now, in my own garden, in a house nobody could take from me. June marked 1 year since I'd walked into that conference room. Since I'd said those words, clean out your desks. Since everything changed. Emily invited me to her daughter's graduation party, the first family event I'd been to in a year. I almost said no, anxiety flooding through me. But Emily promised my parents wouldn't be there. They hadn't been invited to family events anymore either, she explained. Too much drama. Too many bridges burned. I went. Met cousins I'd lost touch with. Heard apologies I'd stopped expecting. Uncle Jim pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. I'm sorry I didn't believe you at first. I'm sorry I assumed you were being harsh. After everything came out, after we saw the evidence, after we watched your parents blame everyone but themselves. I get it now. You weren't destroying the family. You were protecting yourself from people who'd been destroying you for years. That night, I went home and wrote a final blog post. 1 year later, what I've learned about boundaries and healing. The ending read, people ask if I regret my decision. The answer is simple. Not for 1 second. I miss who I thought my parents were. I grieve the family I wished I'd had, but I've never been happier being free of who they actually are. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's refusing to carry their poison anymore. It's building a life so full of genuine love and respect that their absence creates space instead of loss. The post went viral, shared across platforms, generated tens of thousands of comments from people who'd lived similar stories. But my favorite response came in an email from a 23-year-old woman named Sophie. Your story gave me courage to leave my toxic family. I'm scared and alone, but I'm finally free. Thank you for showing me it's possible to survive this. I wrote back immediately. You're not alone. You're part of a whole community of people choosing themselves over toxicity. And trust me, a year from now, you'll look back on this decision as the best thing you ever did. You deserve that freedom. Because that's what this whole journey taught me. Justice felt good. Accountability felt necessary. But freedom? Freedom felt like finally coming home to myself. I looked at the photo on my desk. Me in my new garden, surrounded by roses, genuinely smiling. Not the fake smile I'd perfected for family dinners. A real smile. The smile of someone who'd cut away the dead wood and discovered she could bloom on her own. My phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Same time next month for dinner? My place?" I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Chosen family. The people who earned their place through respect, not demanded it through obligation. That was my family now, and I'd never been happier.